extra improved ploughshare steel. That's what I'm working.
And the point of banging is just to bang out the impurities, is it?
If you're making a Japanese sword, yeah, you'd stretch out the silicon inclusions and all the that's in there and stretch it out into like wood, you know, nice long grain, and that supports itself and all that sort of stuff. And it's like making dough. If you're making a marble cake and you want it to just be, you know, a homogeneous colour, you just keep kneading it, and that's that whole making a Japanese sword thing. With this, all I'm doing is, well, changing the dimensions. We start off with a stock size of blah and hammer it down, and by hammering it down, we compress the grain, we make it flow, so we get better strength for material size. So if you got a bar, if you got a bar and ground it, so stock removal, and made a chisel from it, it wouldn't last as well as one that's forged, because you got all that grain that's compressed in. So yeah, forging, it's the future of metalwork.
So forging, it's about putting the grain in there. So
that's it. It's about grain flow and all that sort of thing. So you get the maximum strength for the minimal amount of material. With casting in the 1800s, you didn't have that the quality control that we have now. Now we can cast, you know, anvils and tools and all this sort of thing, and they'll almost last as well as a forged item. But yeah, back in the day, forging was definitely the way to go. And also, let's say I had, you know, scraps of material and I needed to make, I don't know, a gate lock or something like that. I could fire weld it all together, pack it up, and fire weld it together and create a reasonably homogeneous bit of steel. So if you look at some of these old bits of steel around the place, you can see almost like a wooden grain in them, and then you'll see another bit sort of glued in and mashed in together, fire welded in there. Yeah. Wow, that's pretty intense, isn't it?
Yeah. So fire welding is, you get it all together, you put it in
yep.
the coals?
You supposedly you warm it up a little bit, you put a flux on it. If you're using wrought iron, you can get away with using sand, or sometimes just a really clean fire. And then you heat it up until the surfaces become liquid, and then you gently persuade it to join, and that'll make like an intergranular penetrative weld. It'll sort of really melt in and join together, if you do it right. Of course, if you don't do it right, you just mash two pieces and then they come apart and it looks terrible. And that's where your weakest link come in and all that sort of stuff. Of course, if I was going to be making my own leg irons, I'd be, you know, putting a little bit of a cold shut in there and, oh no, they came apart. What do you know? Over the wall. Yeah.
So what sort of temperature then would you be heating it up to in there?
I just melted this piece of steel earlier by explaining in great detail to a member of the public about something or other. And you can see it's sort of like a blistered, melted surface. And that would have been about, this is spring steel, so probably around like 1400 Celsius, maybe, something along those lines. Pulling a number out of my head, maybe. But you'd get up to 1600 in there pretty easily. With the charcoal, it really gets very hot.
Well, and it contains it as well, eh?
Yes, yeah, the fire clay, refractive clay lining, all it does is bounce the heat back. It absorbs a little bit, but bounces it back. And the tweer, cast iron tweer, it's remarkably sort of, like it'll be bakingly hot by the end of the day, but it won't melt because there's enough mass. Draw the heat away, in theory. So you can see why in bigger forges, in permanent setups, they had a water-cooled tweer iron that went into a Bosch bucket, I think it's called. So you've got water piping into a hollow cast iron tweer, and then the water takes away the heat. And then at the end of the day, you get a nice warm big bucket of water to wash in. Because as you can imagine, you get kind of filthy at the end of the day. Let me just check on this bit of material. Oh no, that's all good.
How about actually starting from scratch with your
iron ore?
Iron ore,
yep,
yeah.
yep. Australia's got really good black sand reserves. Well, a magnetite and iron ore and all that sort of thing. Yes, charcoal, the way to go. I've been involved in a dark age primitive iron ore smelt. So I made a shaft furnace, two bellows, two double bellows. So this is double action bellows, but double bellows are just two single bellows next to each other. So you get that whole Viking double pumping thing happening. Yeah, and we melted charcoal, Talawang iron mine, magnetite, ground up sand, I guess you'd call it. And we melted it into, I wonder if I've got It looks like a section of meteorite almost. It kind of looks a little bit like that, a little bit spikier. That's just glassy slag, so it's quite light, but roughly like that. And you get all these different chunks, and then you laminate them up, or you flatten them out, put them into like a little plate, put them on another piece of wrought iron that you prepared earlier, and fire weld that together. And then that's when you massage out all the problems in there. You know, you homogenize the grain structure and get it all going in the same direction. It's a lot of work, but from 8 hours and I think it was 11 kilos of sand. We got about almost 2 kilos of iron, and which I think it was a remarkably good return. I don't know how many trees went into the process. We didn't weigh it, but it was an entire charcoal pit. It was huge. So it happens to me all the time. Different Alex. It's tough. It's tough sometimes. Yeah, I mean, it was a resource-heavy process, shall we say, but at the end of it, in our little Dark Age village, we managed to get enough to make a little knife. Yes, you know, multiple teams of bellows pumpers, people had blisters and all this sort of thing. There would have been a more efficient way of doing it. The Romans, I think, had taller shaft furnaces, smaller diameter, so there was a lot more preheating of elements and things going in there, so there's a real, you know, and then they'd take out a bloom at the bottom, bust out, open the bottom and take the puddle out and just keep it going. All the heating and cooling and all that sort of thing, it was really hard on the furnace. It didn't last very long.
So it's a really materials intensive process.
Definitely. The amount of tree to iron, and then the iron ore we were using was really rich. I think it was 52% iron as well. And it was all processed, so there's no, you roast it first, and then you crush it and get it nice and fine, and then you melt it normally, but this stuff is all pre-processed, so we took out a major step. We didn't have to dig it as well, it just came in a bucket, so that was good. I have a feeling early on all the iron ore would have been coming to Australia in ships as ballast. Send home timber back to England, yeah.
Wow.
I think. I don't know, I'm just a convict.
And so, in terms of what you're doing here then, what's the process of tempering and
and heat treatment.
Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid this will have to be edited out because it's a secret process. But what you do is heat it up to, let's say it's a plain carbon steel like this, above 723 degrees, which is its upper critical. So the grain structure in the material changes into something that I forget. It's like an austenitic or martensitic or something like that, but the carbon comes into solution in the structure of the material. So heat it up, quench it out, and again, depending on the material, depending on the quenching medium and the rate at which you cool at. So some things you heat up and you put in cold or room temperature air, still air, and it'll harden. Other things you've got to quench in water or brine, so it's a faster quench. So this stuff is like a medium rate quenching oil, like whale oil would be ideal. Oh, I love the smell of whale oil in the morning. So you quench it out, and it goes really, really hard. And then there's that whole grain structure thing, like austenitic, martensitic, whatever, I can't remember. Something happens to it, goes really hard and brittle. So if you were to drop it, it explodes. Then you draw the temper. So, you know, even tempered people and blah, blah, blah. You can see where that comes from.
How do you draw the temper?
You reheat. So you reheat from anywhere between 210 to 400 degrees, something along those lines. So the hotter it is, the more toughness you gain. So you lose hardness and you sacrifice the hardness for toughness. So depending on the job you want to do, like if you wanted to make an axe for cutting timber, you'd probably sacrifice hardness. So when you pulled it out of a bit of timber, it didn't snap off. So you'd go higher temperature, let's say 350, so like a brown or a purple colour. And if you wanted to make like a razor for shaving, you'd go 210, 220, like a tan colour, light tan. So it sort of goes light tan, dark tan, brown, brown that's beginning to get a bit of purple in it, then purple, then like a real rich blue, and then lighter blues, and then it goes into grey, and then around 600 it starts glowing in dull light. You start to get that dark red, that sort of colour, red coat colour. Yeah, there you go. Hope that was reasonably explanatory.
That was good. So it is really about learning the look to understand what.
Well, you can go completely by numbers. So you can rock up to your digital air furnace and go, I want to temper this to this because the manufacturer specifies that for this material. Or you can get the whole eyeball thing happening and the thermocouples in the end of your fingers, and you just go, yeah, that's the right temperature. I'll just do that. Years of experience. Oh yeah, there we go.
And what are you making here?
I'm making a set of little shears. So they're just like sheep shearing shears, but in miniature for snipping thread. And they are used since the Viking Age up till recently. I mean, you can get them in those Chinese sewing shops. They're basically exactly the same. So I'm just drawing out the spring because that's the bit most likely to have a problem. As you can see by the earlier attempt when I gas bagged and burnt it in half, I'll just merrily pumping away. Really temperamental material. It'll burn really easily. It's got a lower working range. It's K1075. Extra improved improved ploughshare steel or K1075. They use it for giant circular saw blades. Makes really good knives, but it rusts. So, allow me to just. So you can see the head of the shear there and the other head over there, that'll be cut off, and I'm just working out the spring at the moment. Unfortunately, can't quite see it in the daylight, but in darkness you'll see the different colours and it'll give you a better idea about your forging range. So you sort of don't want to let it drop below like a dullish orange.
That's why forges always look like dark places. And
That's it. It's the light. You don't want to. You just can't tell what you're doing in sunlight. When your material burns, you get these little tiny sparks that come off the top of the fire, like grinding sparks, and they're even difficult to see in daylight. So you could be merrily smelting your own iron ore in there, and you just wouldn't know. Apart from the intense heat and all that sort of thing, which should be a bit of a giveaway. But darkness is great for forging. You see how thin the section is. Heats up really quickly.